James Carter,
Present.
Dr. Jimmy Clark,
Here.
Dr. John Condos, Mr. Edward Crawford, Ms. Lola Donahoe,
Present.
Dr. Pamela Egan, Mr. Tom Kitchen,
Yeah, here.
Ms. Mimi Methvin,
Here.
Mr. Sean Murphy,
Here.
Mr. Al Perkins, Ms. Elizabeth Pierre, Mr. Virgil Robinson, Mr. Mark Romero,
Here.
Miss Christine Russell,
Here.
Mr. Joe Salter. We have 9, which is a
We have
quorum.
a quorum. Thank you. I'm glad my math works well. First item on the agenda from where we recessed, as you recall, we took 2 items out of order, is item D, and it would be approval of minutes from the June 25th board meeting.
Mhm.
Any questions, or if we could have a motion and a second to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Clark, second by Ms. Donahoe. Any questions? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Motion passes. Ms. Donahoe, if you would please deliver the academic and student affairs items for consideration.
Thank you. We have 5 items on the Academic and Student Affairs Committee agenda today. All are consent items that require approval. Each member previously received executive summaries and associated information on these items. Dr. Janine Kahn, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, will provide the report. Dr. Kahn?
Thank you, Ms. Donahoe. Good afternoon to everybody. We do have 5 items that I will walk through quickly, and if anyone has any questions, of course, let me know. Agenda item E1 is a request to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Charles A. Tinsley Accelerated Schools, which is located in the state of Indiana. The proposed MOU will allow for Grambling to provide dual enrollment opportunities to the students enrolled in this institution. E2 is a request to enter into a license agreement with Clemson University Research Foundation in order to establish a Call Me Mr. program that is designed to diversify the teach force in support of all children. GSU will join 2 sister institutions, Louisiana Tech, which started the Call Me Mr. program in 2017 and was the first in the state to do so. Western State University, which established this program this fall of 2020. And the purpose of the program at all 3 institutions will be to increase teacher diversity, which is critical to closing achievement gaps. Agenda item E3 is a request from Southeastern Louisiana University and is a request for approval of a Master of Science in Population Health Management. The letter of intent for this proposed program was approved by this board in December of 2018 and by the Board of Regents in August 2019. Population health has grown rapidly as a framework that identifies and integrates the activities of the health sector interested in health outcomes among groups of persons. The focus of the program on population health is on healthcare optimization, improved clinical outcomes, and lowered healthcare costs. This is a 34 credit hour program to be delivered 100% online that will assist working individuals and be attractive to individuals outside of the state of Louisiana. The proposed program will be of course interest to public health officials, clinicians, and managers, and upon approval, this would be the only program of this nature in the state of Louisiana. Agenda item E4 is a request from the University of Louisiana at Monroe for approval to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Louisiana Delta Community College. The proposed MOU will allow for a more seamless transfer between the 2 institutions by creating a bridge program for those first-time and transfer students that do not meet ULM admission requirements. And the last item, E5, is a request for approval of System University's 2020 and 21 promotions in faculty rank and recommendations for tenure. This year in total, there were 107 faculty that have been recommended for promotion and rank across the UL system, along with 57 faculty recommended for tenure. All requests were thoroughly reviewed by UL system staff and were determined to be in line with system policies. And that concludes the items to be considered today, Ms. Donahoe, and please let me know, board members, if you have any questions.
I
you.
Yes, sir. Questions from the board? Jimmy?
Yes, two questions. One having to do with the Grambling State University MOU. If I'm understanding correctly, that's with an out-of-state institution. Is that something that is done or has been done? Is that anything that we should be concerned with?
No, there should be no concerns. Actually, I was more curious. I reached out to Grambling because it is in Indiana, and I wondered what the relationship was. And actually, Tinley Accelerated Schools is focused on students in the rural areas in the Indianapolis area that trying to increase their educational attainment and complete high school. And they were the ones that actually reached out to Grambling and wanted to partner with them to provide dual enrollment opportunities. As you know, here in the state of Louisiana, our dual enrollment numbers have increased over the years, more so than some other states, Dr. Clark. And so I think they picked up on the attractiveness of the opportunities that are available here in Louisiana and really wanted to partner with Grambling. So this is a wonderful opportunity for both institutions.
Great. No, I think it's fantastic. I was just a little curious. That's an oddity, and I'm surprised Indiana's letting them out of state.
Well, you know, I agree with you. I thought the same exact thing, and we'll leave Tinley to manage the state of Indiana, manage our folks. But it's a great opportunity for both institutions.
Thanks. The other question is probably a question and a comment, and it's on item number 4, the MOU between UL Monroe and Delta.
Yes, sir.
I'm totally fine with it. And my question is, are we expecting each institution to have to come up with individual MOUs with every proximate institution in order to create seamless transfer opportunities? I just, that strikes me as you know, a major concern if we perpetuate that. I know that we've tried on and off for years and years to get something better done, and I just think we really need to think through how we can either accelerate, push, if it's legislative. I'm not necessarily advocating that legislation needs to be the solution, but I know Senator Ben Nevers, you know, years ago,
Yes.
you know, pushed this whole conversation, and here we are back again, having to get an MOU between institutions that are sitting next to each other. It's just crazy.
And Dr. Clark, having worked a great deal with Senator Nevers and understanding the purpose and the painfulness of it, to be quite frankly, I understand where you're coming from. The expectation is not for every university, not necessarily just in the UL system, but across the state to enter into these MOUs. We have some wonderful ones when you look at Southeastern and what they have done with their partnership and their bridge program with North Shore Technical Community College. And so I think it's just really to solidify the work that's done. The expectation is no, that is not necessarily, but sometimes when you are having students, in this instance, coming from Louisiana Delta to physically come on campus to at ULM to take advantage of their rec centers, their libraries, you do have to put some type of contractual agreement in there because they're having access to those facilities, whereas the general public does not. And so when you're expanding that those opportunities for students, and of course, as you know, the purpose is to allow those students to start to feel a part of the institution, and that'll encourage them to move forward and go through the bridge program and go on to get that baccalaureate degree. But of course, as you know, bureaucracy, and when you open your doors to some people, you do need to put some of that into a legal agreement of sorts. But no, the expectation is not. And so when it, like I said, when it gets into those elements of using facilities, then you do have to incorporate some type of agreement.
I appreciate the explanation on the expansion of an MOU to include access to facilities and so on, and that makes sense to me.
Yes.
What doesn't make sense is this notion that we have to have individual MOUs for transference of credits or admission opportunities, and I'm urging or asking, you know, for staff to advise us on how we as a board can push this forward in a you know, a more global sense with other systems. And
right, yeah, fortunately, you know, we have such a strong backbone when it comes to articulation due to the work of Senator Nevers and lighting that fire under all of us, that there is no reason to have an MOU when it comes to the articulation of coursework, which is first and foremost the most important element, right? But then when you do allocate spaces on a campus to allow for faculty from the other institution to come, when you open your doors to the rec center, the library, the health center, if that's the case, parking, parking is always a hot button on our institutions. You do have to go into that contractual agreement. So if you look at just that, I think it's a 3-page document, this is more so on those elements than the academic components. Does that make sense?
It does. No, that's fine.
Any other questions about that, Dr. Clark?
No.
Dr. Khan, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the 5th item for tenure and rank, do we have any way to get data on the gender and also the race of those tenured faculty?
Yes, ma'am. And I can go over that with you quickly if you'd like, just to give you a summary, and then I'm happy to email that to the board members. I did ask for that information. We don't normally include it on the paperwork that is requested of the universities. However, moving forward for next year, we will do that. And so in hindsight, I did request information in regards to race and gender. And of course, it happened right around when when Laura came to town. And so of the 5 campuses that reported, do you want me to give you a little snippet now or wait?
Well, I'm fine to wait, but it's up to the rest of the board. If they'd like to hear it now, that's fine. But I know we're pressed for time, so that's okay with me as long as I can access that information.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll, in the essence of time, I'll go ahead and just put a quick little email together for everybody on Tuesday after the holiday. And then, of course, do understand, board members, that moving forward, we will get a little more prescriptive when it comes to requesting that information when those promotion and tenure requests come in for 2021 and 22. Okay.
Any other questions by board members? If no one requires further clarification, I would like to recommend approval of items E1 through E5. Do I have a motion and a second, please?
Moved by Mr. Clark, second by Mr. Murphy. Any further questions?
Any comments from the public? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion approved. The next order of business is the athletics.
We have 6 items on the athletic committee today. Mr. Bruce Janae will provide an overview of the consent agenda items by campus.
Thank you so much, Mr. Murphy. Items F1, F2, and F3 are from Louisiana Tech, requesting approval of a contract for head football coach Lewis Holtz Jr., approval of a contract for Eric Conkle, head men's basketball coach, and approval of contracts of various assistant football coaches. Item F4 is from McNeese, approval of contracts of a contract with Andrew Fitzgerald, the head women's soccer coach. And F5 is from Nichols, approval of contract with their new athletic director, Mr. Jonathan Terrell, director of athletics. And finally, item F6 is from University of Louisiana Lafayette, approval of amended contracts for various head coaches. All of the head coaches have agreed to forego their cell phone allowances and academic achievement compensation for a year. And those are all the items I have, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, sir. All of these items have been reviewed by staff and are recommended for approval. Of course, if any member has a question or wishes to discuss any of these items, please let me know. Are there any questions or comments from the board? If no one requires further clarification of these consent agenda items, may I have a motion and a second for approval of items F1 to F6?
So moved.
Okay, I got a motion, Ms. Lola, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, I don't know who that was, but thank you for the second. All in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Hearing none. Motion passes. Do we have any other business at this time?
No, sir, Mr. Murphy. Thank you.
Okay, if not, that concludes the business of the athletic committee. The next committee is facilities planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Our chair and vice chair for facilities, I don't think are on. I've asked Dr. Clark, I think he would, and maybe it's unfair because I don't think he has the actual agenda.
Well, I'm looking at what everybody else is looking at, so I think we can probably.
Dr. Clark, I am ready to send you the script. Are you ready for it?
I'm always ready, Bruce. Whatever you need.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna send it to you right now because I was noticing that they wasn't there.
All right, and Bruce, I'm assuming you're going to do it. I believe that the first thing without reading the script is to simply say that we have 3 consent items and another item for discussion and action, and that Mr. Bruce Dene will be the one to lead us through this. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But one of the items we had taken up yesterday.
And recognizing that we have taken up the cooperative
Item G3, sir. It was
Pardon?
G3.
Right, exactly. The cooperative endeavor agreement with the Louisiana Army National Guard and UL Lafayette has already been taken up. So we actually have 2 consent items that you will be preparing us for today. If you would, please go ahead and do so.
Okay. All right. Item G1 is from Louisiana Tech. The College of Education seeks approval to name the following rooms in the College of Education's Woodard Hall, room 135, the Bow-Ware SciTech Learning Lab, and rooms 140 and 141, the Bow-Ware Idea Place. The College of Education is very grateful for the multi-year support from Doug and Sandra Bow-Ware for the renovation establishment of 2 new learning spaces in Woodard Hall. Item G2 is from McNeese. Approval to enter into a facilities lease agreement with the Southwest Louisiana Charter Academy Foundation to further services currently being provided in their educational service agreement. Our board approved this back in June of 18. The parties would now like to enter into a facility lease agreement where the LCCP would occupy 3 offices and a reception area in Farrar Hall, the same building occupied by Burton College of Education. The lease space would be approximately 850 square feet, and the LCCP would pay McNeese $1,000 a month for the space. The lease would begin on September 1st, 2020, and then on June 30th, 21. This lease would allow for annual renewals if both parties agree. Okay, and for our discussion item, it's item G4. Universal Louisiana Systems request for approval of the fiscal year 21-22 capital outlay budget request and the institution's 5-year capital outlay plans. These plans have been submitted by each president after discussion with their staff to determine their capital outlay needs for the next 5 years. Each of you, the board members, have been sent the system consolidated plan and campus plan. And I've asked each president to be available if you have any specific questions on the campus. And at this time, what I'd like to do is to go through a PowerPoint. For 21-22, we have 106 projects that are totaling $248 million. And our recommendations for the first year, 21-22, we have 42 million emergency projects, self-generated 16.5 million. We have continuing projects for 100.5 million, and campuses, et cetera, have requested new projects totaling 89 million, and it totals 248 million. And our capital outlay approval dates, of course, if the board approves it today, then I will send it to Regents and they will vote on it. Sorry, it has to be sent to Regents October 2nd. Regents at their board meeting will approve it on October 21st. Then is due to the Division of Administration Capital Outlay section November 1st. And then after that, we start the legislative process. And I'm proud to begin to show you some of the projects that we've done. This is the inside of the newly renovated Intramural Center expansion and renovation at Grambling. The anticipated completion is this month, and this is going to be a beautiful facility that the students had voted on, and that's where the funding's coming from. And then the next picture is an outside view of it. This is the actual building. This is not a rendering. And at Louisiana Tech, we're in the process. No, excuse me. This is at Grambling. We are putting up the steel for the library, and this was funded out of capital outlay. And if everything goes well, completion should be May of 2021. And at Louisiana Tech, of course, you all know that on April 25th of 19, a lot of the athletic facilities were destroyed by the tornado. So the funding for this is from insurance. We have a capital outlay, FEMA, and private donations. And you can see that they started erecting the steel. Completion date, March of 21. Along that same lines, we had the softball and soccer fields and support facility destroyed as well. And it's the same type of funding. And we anticipate those facilities to be completed September of 21. So I think both projects are making good progress. Then at Louisiana Tech, I wanted to show you a picture of the new integrated engineering and science building that was completed in November 2019. It was a combination of capital outlay funds and self-generated fees.
But you see, I have no icons, so I have no way to access chat. No.
And at McNeese, this is the new engineering student study lab edition. And what they did was enclose some space. Anticipated completion was September 20, but of course, we don't know the effects of Laura yet, but it was planned for September 20. And at McNeese as well, they end up doing some seating replacement and minor repairs, paid for out of building use fees, and it was completed in July of 2020 from the Frasch Hall Auditorium. And at Nichols, this was some renovations that they made to the Bollinger Student Union. It was, the source of funding was private funds and self-generated funds. It was completed in the fall of 2019. Also at Nichols, this was a renovation to their Shaver gym. Anticipating completion is sometime this fall. And at Northwestern, I think that most of you have been inside this. This is the A.A. Fredericks Creative and Performing Arts Center. It was auditorium renovation completed in January of this year. It really turned out nice. And this is the foyer renovation. I'm sure that many of you walked into the old foyer. This was completed as well in January of 20. And at Southeastern, this is a project at Tinsley Hall. It transformed the facility. It was doing window and exterior door replacement and interior renovation to create a student support center. And it was a combination of different funds, some major repair money and some non-operating funds from various sources. It was completed in June of this year. And I think that most of the board members have been through Vickers Hall, which is at Southeastern. Almost every student takes a class there. And what they do or looking to do is do a complete renovation. Funding will be from capital outlay and private donations. Anticipated completion fall of 23. But it was a much needed renovation. This is some apartments, the Heritage at Cajun Village. It was funded through the Raging Cajun facilities. It was completed in August of 2019, and it provides for an additional 597 bed apartment complex. And the units have 1, 2, and 3. And probably due to COVID that they've probably changed their structure some.
Is that a resort?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And at ULL, this was an emergency project that they did at Fletcher Hall. Fletcher was originally opened in '76, and due to ongoing leaking problems, emergency repair projects have been funded through in 2 phases, and that they should be ready for occupancy in November of this year. This is at ULM. They end up replacing the golf complex. It's called the ULM Wally Jones Golf Complex. And funding was totally out of private donations, completed in October 2019. So those of you that enjoy golf, I'm sure you can go and play there, and it'd be a nice facility. Very, very nice. And this was a School of Construction Management addition. It was also done through private donations, and it was completed in March of this year. And then we come to University of New Orleans, and I think that some of you may be on trips there. You had gone to the science building and the chemistry lab, and it was a much needed renovation. And the funding came, it was $1 million from an anonymous private donor. In phase 1, it's going to be in several phases. Phase 1 completed in 2019, and phase 2 will start in the spring of 2021. And finally, at University of New Orleans, this was an Entergy solar panel installation at the University Center and Fitness Center. It was completely funded by Entergy in a partnership with the university, and anticipating completion is this month. And that is all the items I have, Dr. Clark. And if anybody has any questions on capital outlay, I think we have our presidents who can be joined in if we have any specific questions. And each of you have been sent the overall plan and the campus plan.
Do we have questions from the board relative to the capital outlay request? Mr. Janae, just for points of clarification, the $200+ million request, and it goes through the process. Do we have any indication about availability this year, the reality of the state budget? What are our chances of actually seeing any of this take place?
I mean, I'm sure that some of it would take place. What the next step is that we have a certain priority, and then it goes to Regents, and Regents puts together a priority listing. So some of our projects may or may not make it. And then it goes into the hands of the legislature, where that's where we find out, what else being funded and happening. But we don't have any idea, the funding on that, how much of the 248.
Maybe this is a question for President Henderson. Have we received any information from Division of Administration? Have they cautioned or?
No, we have not received anything regarding revenue forecast or about budget restrictions. Of course, we continue to be overextended in capital outlay for the entire state. We have been for some time. And so capital outlay dollars have been very, very scarce. Although our system has been quite fortunate in advocating on behalf of our institutions. We will not get anywhere close to $200 million entered in taken care of at any time. I distinctly remember the first time I went through a capital outlay visit. We went through in great detail every item on the list through about 36 pages. The next year, one item had come off of the list, and we still went through in great detail all 36 pages. And that was my first introduction to state government. I have found out that our facility needs are going to have to be driven by public-private partnerships if we're going to be able to be successful. That relying on the capital outlay dollars for our most innovative projects is simply just is not realistic.
Right, and Dr. Henderson, if you notice when I was going through the presentation, you know, we wouldn't have got nearly what we accomplished had it not been for private donations or self-generated funds or building use fees as well.
And Supervisor Clark, those, when you have those types of funds to leverage, then the state dollars flow much more easily. But in terms of just the old approach of just general state dollars to fund capital, those days are gone for the foreseeable future.
Just a quick question, Bruce. On average, what's been the capital spending for the last, say, 3 years, just approximately?
Something I don't know, Mr. Kitchen.
Okay, well, let me ask it a little bit different way. Jim, what's in the capital outlay bill? How much is approved, say, on average for the UL system?
Well,
Is it?
There's a tiered system for approvals. So you'll have a priority 1, a priority 2, and priority 5, right? So priority 1 is where you have cash basis, you have cash in hand. A priority 2 is waiting for authority, and priority 5 is where they want to, I'm just talking layman's term, is when they want to put an item into the bill, but not actually do anything with it for any time in the near future. So this last year we were quite successful in getting about $120 million into the bill, but about I would imagine about 36 million of that will be available for use this current year on projects.
And I believe in the advanced materials there was some schedule that gave us the amount of deferred maintenance or capital items deferred. I mean, I think it's worthwhile mentioning because it's a staggering number.
So it's an approximation. It's about $375 million across our system. For the entirety of higher education, it's over $1 billion. I will tell you, we in 2006 is when I made my first trip to a technical college in Louisiana, and it was the one in Winfield, Louisiana, the Huey P. Long campus. It was aptly named because Huey Long was at its ribbon cutting, and I believe that was the last time a state official had visited the campus. I left with my stomach in a knot because it was deplorable. Every person on campus had a roll of Visqueen in their office, and when a certain code came over the intercom, they went to their roll of Visqueen and they were assigned computers to cover because the roof was a sieve. And when I found out that we had about 46 campuses in similar state, we went and did an alternative approach to financing. We did 14 campuses and $250 million application that was it was actually endorsed by Governor Blanco. It was pushed through by Senator Robert Adley. And then we did a second tier of that 4 years later for another $250 million. So $500 million in new technical education facilities. That approach worked. It defied the existing process. And so there was, anytime you do that, it was, there were some that really liked the idea. There were others that really fought against it. I believe the first one, I went to bond commission 11 times before we got things approved, but we finally got them approved. Those types of innovative approaches is what it's going to take to get this done. Because the deferred maintenance number only goes up, right? Unless I would love for us to be in a place where we're putting 6% of our total revenues into general maintenance. But unfortunately, we're not resourced in a way that we can do that at this point.
And you know, something too, Mr. Kitchen, this past year, the state chose not to fund any deferred maintenance. Our system has been getting roughly about $3.5 to $4 million a year among the 9 campuses, but the legislature chose not to send any money for deferred maintenance, but then they funded a lot. They gave us a lot more money on projects than in the past. So
And if I could, I would like to say in the president's report, I'll be asking for your approval on an attorney general's request on some questions we have with this third party partnership, Louisiana Energy Partnerships, that would address if it turns out that it's feasible. So we've got the legal questions that they ask first, then the feasibility questions. And if that turns out to be feasible, that will address a large portion of our deferred maintenance challenge. Of course, there are a number of issues to work through with that, a number of conversations we need to have, and a lot of evaluation and assessment to take place. But that's one of those innovative approaches that could help address that.
Well, just one last comment. I think that I would like some assurance that we are addressing all safety-related capital expenditures as well as legally mandated, capital expenditures. Maybe the next report, next meeting, if we could get some brief report and some comfort that notwithstanding some of the limits on the capital budget for the current year and next year, we are certainly giving funds to these legal as well as the safety related CapEx that we need to take care of.
Absolutely. We'll separate those out as life safety, accessibility, and then deferred maintenance. I think that will give us a good.
Okay.
I do have a question about the impact of Hurricane Laura and understanding, of course, the McNeese situation is still not entirely clear, but will the potential need for serious dollars to, fix not only McNeese, but other, campuses impacted adversely, will that alter in any way our request as it currently is going forward?
No, sir, it won't. And I'll explain why. So I'll have it in the president's report, but I'll go ahead and tell you now because it's appropriate. So I was at McNeese today. You can get a better feel than earlier this week when we were there about the damage. I would have told you earlier in the week that the damage amount was about $35 to $40 million. Today, I'll tell you it's more like $75 million and could go upwards as we get into buildings to $200 million on that campus. As we currently stand, we're in a 70-30 scenario with FEMA. I fully expect that to go to a 90-10 very, very soon. So where FEMA funds 90% of the cost. In addition to that, we're working with the federal delegation on language that will go into a relief bill with the community development block grants. You'll hear that term CDBG quite often, that will allow some of those resources possibly to help close the gap on that 10%. We have put in place an apparatus, and by the way, we met, the governor had a meeting at GOSEP with us Wednesday night. He had his facilities team, he had the Office of Risk Management, Commissioner Reed was there. We had a great conversation. He reiterated his concerns about moving forward orderly but quickly, putting a timeline in place, a project plan in place, having milestones and checkpoints on that. Encouraged his staff to work very, very closely with us. He called this morning to reiterate that. He called Daryl Burkell to reiterate that. Paul Rainwater, who works with us in advocacy, is also the state's recovery guru. He is the expert, is working very closely with McNeese to ensure that we get all of the I's dotted and T's crossed, because that's very, very important with FEMA. And to be honest, the damage at McNeese is pretty straightforward. It's not a lot of water intrusion. It's more structural physical damage, which is an easier thing in some regards to address with FEMA. And so as long as we don't have a great deal of repurposing, it should be a pretty straightforward approach. Now there is some need for repurposing, and that's where the challenges can come into play. But I think we're ahead of the game. In fact, that I was there after Rita, and I believe we're probably 2 to 3 weeks ahead of where we were at this point with Rita. Unfortunately, that comes with practice, right? And so I think we learned a lot of lessons. McNeese has, of course, we are so fortunate to have Daryl Burkell as the president. He is doing an extraordinary job leading. His facilities staff is amongst the best in the country. They're just, when you go to capital outlay visits with them, you'll see the substance of their and the comprehensiveness of their reports, the organization. I think that led to a mitigation of some of the damage ahead of time because they got things situated correctly, but it's just enhanced their response overwhelmingly. And I'd be remiss, since we're talking about McNeese, if I didn't extend from Dr. Burkell his thanks to the entire UL system, it's his sister institutions, for their response. And they have been over backwards to open up facilities for students, for faculty, for staff. Cami has helped coordinate a statewide approach so that students can get access to library space, to computer labs, to ID cards, to student support personnel. It's been a collective effort that is only just beginning. And you know, when you're still without power and without water, it's hard to think about these other necessities, but they're there. And I know the McNeese community appreciates it. I was there this morning with in a large room, a warehouse almost, if you will, filled with donated supplies, water, cleaning supplies, sanitary supplies, everything from diapers to fish fry. And for some reason, we have 7 pallets of fish fry. We have enough fish fry to fry every single fish in any waterway in the state of Louisiana, but we've got it. Senator Fields was with me today, and he was quick to point out that the fish fry came from a manufacturer that's in his district. And so we thank him profusely for that. But Senator
It's gotta
Fields,
be Tony's, huh? Tony's?
no, and Senator Abraham was there as well. And then later, Commissioner Reed was there. The outpouring of support from the governor to the legislature to our higher ed partners has been greatly appreciated, and it's going to help us recover.
Any other questions from the board relative to facilities?
One last point, if I could, Supervisor Clark.
Please.
You know, unfortunately, a little over a year ago, we went through the tornado issue at Louisiana Tech. And the state is, as well as McNeese, but the state is drawing on lessons they learned from the disaster response at Louisiana Tech to inform this response. And while that wasn't a named storm at Tech, the Louisiana Tech response to that has been extraordinary as well. And it's really informing this work we're doing now.
Well, Dr. Henderson, as you said, it's both a blessing and a curse to be able to rely upon past experiences to help us get better. But I do appreciate having Paul Rainwater, you know, on board and helping. Certainly has led us through a lot of things in the state, and so that was good news to hear.
Yes, sir.
All right. The previously discussed agenda items, I believe it was G1, G2 earlier this hour, have been reviewed by board and legal staff and are recommended for approval. We've asked the board to pose questions. Are there any comments or questions from the public? All right. If no one requires further clarification of the agenda items, may I have a motion and a second for approval of items G1 and G2?
I'll move.
All right. Is there any discussion? I heard I'm supposed to say who that was, and I apologize. Lola, was that you?
I'll second it. I think someone else, maybe Tom.
I think Tom did. I think Tom Kitchen absolutely was the one who made the motion, and Lola Donahue was kind enough to second it. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Do we have any other business at this time?
Well, Dr. Clark, you do need a motion for item G4 to approve the capital outlay plan.
I apologize. I'm negligent in not following absolute directions here. So I'll ask for another motion second for item G4.
So move.
So move.
All right. I heard James Carter move, and I believe Sean Murphy seconded, or vice versa.
Yes, sir.
All right, are there any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion to approve G4 passes. Now, do we have any further business at this time? All right, if not, that concludes the business of the Facilities Planning Committee. Next move is to Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Kitchen? Might want to unmute.
Mr. Kitchen, you're on mute.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's better?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have 8 consent items on the finance agenda today. Any member has a question or wishes to discuss any of the items, please let us know. Charles, will you please provide an overview of items 1 through 4? And I believe you and Bruce will tag team the remaining items, that need to be on the consent agenda.
Yes, sir. And if you like, I can just pass it over to Bruce when I finish the items.
Sure.
Make it easier for you. On the Finance Committee, item 1, we actually have 7 today because the first item H1, was approved by the board yesterday evening, and that dealt with the deferral of Grambling's debt payments on their bonds. And they needed those documents sent in today. So that has been taken care of. So we'll start with item H2, which is McNeese University's request to change the per credit hour charge for its electronic learning fee assessment. This assessment was started in 2004 to help with appropriate courses to cover the costs associated with software licensing, bandwidth costs, hardware maintenance and upgrades, and server administration and support for classes that were conducted 100% online. And the initial fee was $20. And as of this past year, it's generating about $1.1 million annually. And because there is a greater deal of technology applied and a move toward more online classes, what the university is proposing to do is to change the $20 fee, per credit hour fee for the online classes only, to reduce it to $7 and apply it to all classes with no credit hour gap. But dual enrollment classes are exempt from the fee and will remain so under their existing fee structure. And based on their current enrollment, McNeese estimated that this fee would be expected to bring in about $1.3 million. So about $200,000 more than under the $20 per credit hour fee. Okay, item H3 is also McNeese, and it's a request for the system to execute leases between the board on behalf of the university and Cowboy Facilities, Inc., which is its nonprofit corporation, commonly known as its facility corporation. And it's a nonprofit corporation in connection with the lease and lease back of a portion of the university's campus to finance the costs related to rebuilding the student union. These fees, or this transaction, is the result of the student referendum to approve a fee to rebuild, refurbish the current student union. And that was approved, I believe, in April of 2020. The principal amount of bonds on that transaction are going to be about $10 million. No, excuse me, an amount not to exceed $10 million. And then also there's going to be a note issued by CFI, if I'm not mistaken, make sure I'm correct on that, of $8 million. So they're expecting from a note and bonds about $18 million in spending on that. Then item H4 is Southeastern Louisiana's request for the approval to implement a per credit hour tuition fee for its online programs. And Southeastern is proposing implementing a tuition rate of $375 per credit hour for undergraduates up to 12 hours and $475 per credit hour for up to 9 hours for online programs that don't have a previously established rate. And the tuition rate will change to $100 per credit hour for each additional hour after the 12 hours for the undergraduates and the 9 hours for graduates. And of course, the rate does not include textbooks or other program course or lab fees that may apply. And it doesn't apply to programs that have a previously established contract rate. That would be, for example, any contracts they have for special programs. It would not affect the system's Compete Louisiana program as well. And those are items H 2 through 4. And Bruce, if you would cover number 5.
Sure. Thank you, Charles. Item H5 is from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, a request for approval by the board of their audit charter. The internal audit charter sets forth the purpose, authority, and responsibilities of the internal audit activity. The charter has been changed to follow compliance with mandatory standards. This update was recommended after an external review of the university's internal audit activity that was completed in July 22nd, 2020.
Okay, Bruce.
No,
Is that Bruce?
Bruce, are you finished?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, Charles.
6, which is you and request for approval to enter into our agreement with Mama Content LLC.
Charles, I think your the audio is very poor, at least as far as my reception goes.
Okay. What else?
I'm having impossibility hearing you.
Yeah, Charles, I don't know what happened, but you were clear before, but now you're garbled.
If you give me a couple of seconds, if you want to go through Bruce again, I will call in my phone.
Okay, Charles.
Okay.
For those who couldn't hear, Charles is going to call in using his phone to get better service.
Okay. Well, maybe Bruce, why don't we skip ahead to number 7, if you could help us with that.
Sure. Item H7 is from University of Louisiana Systems request for approval of our 2019-20 financial and compliance and federal award program letters of representation for each of our schools that are being audited this year by the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office. The initial representations have been signed by the respective presidents as well as the CFO.
Bruce, with regard to that, I looked at each one of them and I did not notice any exception taken by any of the CFOs. Is that correct?
I pretty much looked at them myself and I do not remember any, but if there are any exception that they would be noted. And also whenever the legislative auditor conducts their exit conference, then that will be updated. But at this time, I do not remember seeing any type exceptions.
If you can just double check that before we leave this part of the agenda, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
And Charles, we're coming back to you. Is this my ability to read lips is limited?
I'm working on that right now. Sorry.
Any suggestions on what to do with Charles's audio?
Charles, have you restarted?
Yeah, my suggestion would be to log off and log back on and it should fix it.
Just leave the meeting and click the link again and we'll bring you right back up.
Charles,
Yes.
you're going to need to leave the meeting and then re-engage the meeting.
And the number to call in Philadelphia. Just
Mr. Kitchen, would it be appropriate for Charles to go to item H9? I know it's a discussion item, but he could at least report on it.
Yeah, Charles was going to report on that as well, I believe.
Was he? I
Yes.
apologize.
Yeah. Or maybe.
I-
Bruce, are you going to handle H9?
Yes, sir. I was scrolling through the legislative order. And if I may ask Mr. Kitchen, because it may take me a few minutes to do it, what about that while the rest of the meeting is going on, if I could look at those? But
Charles is coming on right now.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for that, but technology. Okay, are we back to item H6?
That's correct.
Okay. Item H6 was UNO's request for approval to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement with Model Content LLC for training and support for the university's Advanced Materials Research Institute to develop projects for entrepreneurial development programs. The purpose of the agreement is to allow Model Content to work with AMRI to offer workshops on marketing, science, writing, user experience, for AMR faculty and students, to provide internships with science and business students, and to provide training and support for faculty and students working to develop projects for the program. The immediate proximity readily allows for the exchange of ideas in the education and development for AMRI researchers in the various aspects of marketing as it applies to both academics and industry. And the proximity will serve to help in the development of other small businesses based on existing technologies. And the collaborative agreement will serve the public through development of a marketing company. And Model Content will train and employ Louisiana workers, including students and graduates from UNO. It will serve to elevate the research programs of UNO through the development of new collaborative projects. It will help bring in additional state and federal funding through the NSF I-Corp programs and small business development grants. Several are listed. And then it will also serve to train undergraduate students through internships and graduate students through collaborative projects, workshops, training programs involving AMR faculty and Model Content. UNO's obligation is to provide Model Content a reduced rental rate for space in UNO's science building, the cost of which the university estimates will be exceeded by the advancement of the programs in the science and engineering of materials, training of undergraduates through internship opportunities and seminars on technology and small business aspects of the Model Content. No other costs or expenses incurred by Model Content under the agreement shall be paid or reimbursed by the university unless they're agreed upon in writing by UNO and Model Content. Okay, that was a lot. Now I have a brief PowerPoint presentation on the system's operating budget, which will also require approval. And we'll go through the slides individually. These are essentially the same slide formats that you have seen in the prior years, and it shows where we're standing on our budget. And if you look at the trends this year, our budget, our fees and self-generated are approximately 74% of the budget, while our state support is about 26%. So it has, our fees and self-generated support have gone up a little bit for the current year. And you can see that our operating budget is down a little bit, about $6 million. That's due in part to budget reductions that have occurred because of the COVID shutdown. And then the next one. And our state support, fees and self-generated. Last year we were budgeted 670 million, and we're expecting about $673 million this year on the operating side. And it's my understanding that our tuition and fees by and large are either flat or just slightly ahead of fall semester last year. Any additional shutdowns obviously could impact that. And then our state support, and this is a little different here on the state support in our state general fund appropriation. Last year we had 224 million. This year we have only 170 million. But keeping in mind that we had that $47.9 million that we've talked about before, or I'll just call it 48 million. We've talked about that before. That is that House Bill 307 appropriation from the prior year. And that money is in our appropriation this year, but not through state general fund direct. It's a transfer in of funds. We did not get that money in fiscal 2020. It actually came right at July 31st. So if you add that $48 million, you'll see that we would be about 218 million, which represents that $6 million. And then the average tuition and fees this year, we're anticipating $8,832. So we're looking at about a $79 increase per student. And then this pie chart just gives you a visual of where we stand. The bulk of our operating budget is spent on personal services. That's going to also include the retirement contributions and healthcare contributions that we as employers pay. That would be from those operating funds. And then our operating expenses are 9%, other charges 18%, and then acquisitions and repairs in the operating budget are significantly less. Now, the other thing is that you all should have received our operating budget summary for the system as a whole. And it has both, it'll have these slides in it. It will, our graphs or charts. It will also have the system as a whole, and it will also provide information for each of our universities. So are there any questions on any of that?
Just a quick question. Just Jim, enrollment was, an unknown. Last time we had a meeting, I think that there were a lot of moving pieces. I mean, how's the enrollment shaken out for the universities?
Well, since the last meeting, it hasn't changed much. We still expect them to be flat, down slightly in undergraduate, up slightly in graduate enrollment. The challenge is what happened last week. I mean, and for the first time, all 9 of our institutions were closed for a single weather event. 4 of our institutions remain closed all of this week. So they have changed their registration dates, they've extended them. And so, Mr. Kitchen, that just adds a new level of uncertainty. Over the next 2 weeks, we will have a much firmer idea of what that enrollment number will be. I don't expect significant weight, either plus or minus. I will tell you that McNeese has canceled class until the 18th of September. And I believe that that's still a pretty optimistic return to class date. I would expect that to be extended further out. And so with that, they've actually offered students the ability to get refunds for this semester if they're just not able to come to school. And it's the right thing to do. So they're offering them the ability to get a refund, to enroll in another school, or to extend that to a credit for next spring. I talked to a number of students today. Now, you would expect the students that were there today to be not a representative sample. So I want to be very clear on that. But those I talked to today were very, very excited about returning to school, even if it's in an online format, because they're looking for normalcy, right? Some sense of order. Again, I don't know that it's representative of the body as a whole, but McNeese's enrollment will be one that it'll be probably another 6 weeks before we know.
Okay,
So,
Okay,
Jim, just to clarify that a final enrollment by institution report is to be expected.
So at least 2 weeks from now, with the exception of Louisiana Tech, which, Louisiana Tech, the quarter system, they only go to class about a month a year, I think, or something along those lines. I've never been able to figure Tech's schedule out, and Les does that on purpose.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I had one other question on that report, if I may. I think I heard you say that our tuition and fee increase was $79 on average, or a total of $79.
Yes, sir. It went from $8,753 to $8,832.
And of course, that's a summative to all institutions and an average out. Am I correct to assume then that the items that we voted on throughout the year for increased fees was primarily where that increase occurs from?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion and second for approval of the consent items?
So moved.
That's Lola moved, and
Second.
second was James?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right, thank you. So I have a motion and a second, and is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None, hearing none, the motion passes. We have one discussion item on the finance agenda today. Bruce, will you please walk us through item 9?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Item H9 is University of Louisiana System Report on internal and external audit activity for the period of June 22nd, August 23rd. Each of you were sent a list of internal and external audit reports completed by various auditors since the last board meeting. Also included are audits that are in progress, and also a follow-up timetable to ensure that recommendations made in previous reports are followed up on. I do have a copy of all of the reports that were issued should any of you want to see the entire report. And Mr. Kitchen, this is a report only and no action by the board is necessary.
Bruce, I take it that, after reviewing the reports, there's nothing that rises to the level of concern for the board?
No, sir. I do want to commend the various auditors because each of them have to go through a very extensive external validation. It's required once every 5 years, and all campuses have done that. And the only campus that's pending is the University of New Orleans because there were extenuating circumstances with the person that was doing the validation. So all the results of that are included in the summary. And this was a topic that that Legislative Auditor's Office was monitoring. So except for University of New Orleans, which should be completed this month, all of our campuses complied with the Act 314 of the 2015 record session.
Very good. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, any other business to come before this committee? If not, Mr. Chair, these are all the items for finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kitchen. And Ms. Methvin, if you would proceed with our personnel committee at this time.
All right, hold on. We have 2 items on the Personnel Committee agenda today that are being presented on the consent agenda, and Dr. Jones is going to provide an overview of each item.
Thank you, Ms. Methvin, and good afternoon to everyone. Consent item I-1 is McNeese State University's request for approval to appoint Mr. Heath Royer as Interim Director of Athletics effective July 1st, 2020. And consent item I-2 is University of Louisiana Lafayette's request for approval to appoint Dr. Ahmed Khattab as Dean of the College of Engineering effective July 1, 2020. And that concludes the items to be considered today.
All right, was everyone able to hear Dr. Jones? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, very good. These agenda items were reviewed by the staff. They've been recommended for approval. Are there any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? If there's no discussion, no one requires any further clarification. May I have a motion and a second for approval of the items listed on the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, and I can't see who that was. Who made the motion?
Jimmy?
Okay, and second.
Tom.
All right,
second.
very good. Thank you all. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Do we have, are any of our new employees present to make any comments or introduce themselves? All right.
They
Do we
don't
have
seem
any
to be
other-
present.
Okay. Do we have any other business? If not, that concludes the items on the Personnel Committee.
Supervisor Methvin, I will point out, I was with Heath Schuler this morning at McNeese, and he has a very good excuse for not being here today. But
I can only imagine.
he is doing extraordinary work with that whole team, but I know they appreciate your thoughts and prayers.
Absolutely. So he's been the head basketball coach, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. And he's done a wonderful job revitalizing that program, and he's a leader of just immense character, and was heavily involved in the recruitment of their new football coach, Frank Wilson, and has been helping them with a great deal of athletic administration just in his previous role. I think he's going to be a great one for McNeese going forward.
Wonderful. Great news.
Yes, ma'am.
That concludes the Personnel Committee, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Methvin. We appreciate you presenting that information today. Dr. Henderson, would you please present your report at this time?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, you were emailed copies of the personnel actions for your review, and they've been reviewed by staff. They're recommended for approval. And Mr. Chairman, we need a motion and a second for that.
If we could have a motion, it's moved by
I move.
Dr. Clark, seconded by Mr. Carter. Dr. Carter, all in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Roll call vote, actually. I'm sorry, Carol.
Okay, I've got it. Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Dr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Crawford, Ms. Donahoe,
Yes.
Mr. Kitchen,
Yes.
Ms. Methvin,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy, Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Mr. Romero,
Yes.
Ms. Russell. Yes. I think that's everyone.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I just got a phone call, and he told me not to tell you who it was because he should be in our meeting right now. So
I think he just called me.
So we'll just go past that real quick.
He wanted to know why you didn't visit him while you were in Lake Charles.
That's right. So our presidential evaluations, we'll have evaluations for our campus presidents. They've already been received. They'll be reviewed and discussed with you in October at our next regular board meeting. I must tell you that evaluations this year should have some extra credit added to them because in our job descriptions for presidents, we did not discuss global pandemics, statewide hurricane stoppages, and immense social unrest. That was in other duties as assigned, I suppose, but we'll talk about that at length when we evaluate our presidents next October. Members, I have a request for you that's it's something that's not usual that we do, and that's probably a good thing. But several of our institutions in the system have explored partnerships with Louisiana Energy partners under an original cooperative endeavor agreement between LAEP and the state of Louisiana. And there's an opt-in provision that's outlined in that cooperative endeavor agreement. There's several questions that have arisen that we need answers to ensure these transactions align with those opt-in criteria. And it's necessary that we have these questions answered to proceed to any final contract negotiation or even to do a true scope of work to bring to you for discussion and approval. So yesterday you were emailed a copy of a resolution that authorizes me to request an Attorney General's opinion to answer those questions. And Mr. Chairman, we need a motion and a second to approve that resolution.
Got a motion to approve the resolution for LAP.
So moved.
By Ms. Donahoe, second by Ms. Methvin. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you about bridging the divide. So the COVID-19 pandemic is revealing the breadth of higher ed's digital and technological divide. So think about your access to digital content and digital access, information access is heavily dependent on location and socioeconomic status. That's what we mean when we talk about the digital and technological divide. So recognizing this challenge, our system, in collaboration with 9 member institutions, developed a summer series called Bridging the Divide. It aimed to improve the digital and technological literacy and skills and expand online support through education, training, and professional development opportunities for all faculty and staff across the system. The series ran for 7 weeks. We had over 70 professional development courses, engaged more than 500 faculty and staff. The series concluded with an impactful 2-day virtual conference with nationally recognized keynote speakers, Drs. Bridget Burns and Michael Sorrell. Michael Sorrell is from Paul Quinn College, which is just an extraordinary example of innovation and mission-driven excellence. And he just did a fabulous job. They talked about engaging student, and it was a very engaging student and faculty discussion as well. The developed course and the conference content will remain available to faculty to get engaged with in perpetuity. And we may send the members a link if you want to sample some of that. Give you a quick update on our Management and Leadership Institute. Our fourth Management and Leadership Institute class has been nominated, and we have a little bit flexible plan to start meeting in person in October. So Louisiana Tech, Grambling, and ULM have agreed to host a collaborative meeting in November. So our class will continue to experience each campus over the course of their year. Maybe not as in great detail in those first 3 as normal, but they'll still get that experience. The third class is anxiously awaiting to reschedule their final 2 meetings and are looking forward to presenting their group project to the board when the circumstances permit. Over the last few months, the classes have been a rich source of intercampus communications and support as we've navigated the intermediate challenges. Much like our system's other working groups, MNLI cohorts have become efficient catalysts for sharing best practices, for collaborative, multidimensional problem solving, and for basic collegial support. Except they function with the strength of a unit replete with diverse viewpoints. It's a product of their exposures and their experiences in the program, and it's very, very important given their disparate roles at our universities. One product of their work is kind of exciting. It's fun. It's the MNLI Book Club. It was an initiative suggested by Dr. Dan McCarthy from Southeastern, but it was adopted by all 3 of the MNLI classes. And the idea came out of their conversations discerning how to have meaningful impact and facilitate change. So they recognize that the hardest step sometimes is initiating the dialogue that leads to that change and leads to that innovation. So the class has settled on using literature, which as a former journalism English major speaks to my heart. Decided to bring, in this case, to bring the Black experience to life and to structure thoughtful discourse, awareness, and reflection. So the first book discussion was held in July, and it dug into The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Over 90 faculty and staff across our system registered for the virtual event. It was kicked off with our system's resident in-house Toni Morrison expert, Dr. Holly Stave of Northwestern's Louisiana Scholars College. Dr. Stave is an extraordinary lecturer on feminist theory. She's an incredible advocate for student learning. And she is she is one of the nation's foremost Toni Morrison experts. And it was an extraordinary experience. The next book is Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Daniel Tatum, and it's scheduled for next month. If you'd like, I'll get Caprice Ayu to send board members more information about that. It may be something that you would want to even participate in. I think it's an extraordinary advance for our system. I want to update you a little on COVID-19, and as everyone in our room virtually and on the screens well aware, we still find ourselves in the middle of a global pandemic, and we're hearing some reports of significant outbreaks at college campuses across the country. You've likely seen a lot of news coverage about the case reporting and the dashboards. This board has spent countless hours discussing our campus reopening strategy, and that just pales in comparison to the hours campus leadership has spent fleshing out plans and preparing a safe return to campus. First and foremost priority throughout our response to this global pandemic has been the health and safety of students, faculty, and staff. But even with hours of planning, we knew that these plans would not lead to a COVID-free semester. Instead, those hours of planning led to a systemic decision to mandate face coverings, to have significant changes to our room occupancy, to mandate special accommodations for those who are part of a vulnerable population or whose circumstances require them to be routinely in the presence of a member of a vulnerable population. We have been very, very responsible in reporting cases that have an impact on public health decisions, both at the individual level and the policy level. Several of our schools, most recently UL Lafayette, have introduced a pretty comprehensive dashboard that reports cases. And that level of transparency is vital for the health and safety of our campus communities. Now, the day before yesterday, several of us engaged on a call with the Louisiana Department of Health's chief epidemiologist, Dr. Teresa Sokol. And LDH is leading an effort to report cases on college campuses in an informative way. So our member institutions will be working with LDH, will provide access to data, protect student privacy, but it informs public health decisions. It'll be reported on a weekly basis for those cases that are confirmed through on-campus testing and those that are self-reported. It's a very, very important step toward thoughtful and transparent reporting. I also want to point out that we are developing our own approach to testing. So we have CDC guidelines for diagnostic testing, a PCR test, if you will. And CDC does not recommend testing asymptomatic people. But we're going to take a different approach with some surveillance testing, a sentinel testing approach, if you will. Dr. Ramesh Kalaru from UL Lafayette. If you haven't heard his name enough, you have no idea the kind of work that this professional does for UL Lafayette and for the entire system. This last year, he helped generate $144 million in research expenditures at UL Lafayette, but he's also been coordinating with all of our schools and developing this surveillance testing method that is based on a LAMP-based test. And LAMP is a loop-mediated test. It's a PCR. It's highly effective for surveillance testing. If you have a positive LAMP test, you do need to get then a PCR diagnostic test, but it will allow us to have more insight to the prevalence of virus in our communities, and then we'll partner with LDH in making informed decisions in regards to that as well. So I'm very excited about that. It's probably, well, I don't want to say probably, it's one of the most innovative approaches to testing and to surveillance testing, I think, that exists in the country. We've already spent time talking about Hurricane Laura, and I don't want to go over that again, but I will tell you that Grambling, Tech, ULM, UL Lafayette, and McNeese all experienced damage from the storm. Now, the eye came directly over Calcasieu Parish. And today I listened as I got a text from Daryl Burkell in the middle of the night, it tells me the building they're in, the roof just flew off. And when that was a terrible text to get. When they recounted the story today about being in that building and feeling that building shudder under the force of this storm, it took my breath away. Folks, I was in Lake Charles a week after Hurricane Rita, and it was horrible. It was tragic. What we have seen, and Cammie was with me earlier this week, and what I saw today, this is a different level by an order of magnitude. We are very fortunate to have the leadership that we do at McNeese. We are very fortunate to have a community that has come together in terms of our University of Louisiana system to support McNeese. But bringing Lake Charles back, bringing McNeese back is going to be a long-term effort that's going to require support from many, many different people. It's very heartening to watch the outpouring of support from our 9 institutions. It is reaffirming of our work that we've done to build a sense of system, and we can be quite proud of that. Now, we've launched a cowboy relief effort to provide opportunities for the other members to support McNeese. Some of those initiatives already in the works include providing housing and resources such as computer labs, Wi-Fi, recreation access to displaced McNeese students, connecting student organizations with volunteer opportunities, and leading supply drives. The McNeese Foundation also has a relief fund that is accepting monetary donations. And I'll ask Cammie to ensure that you all have a link to that relief fund. That relief fund can help support faculty, it can help support students and staff, and you have no idea in a number of ways they need support. Today I was talking to a group of students who live now in Jennings, and they were working, handing out supplies to those that came, that needed supplies. Their greatest need, gas money, so they can go back to Jennings every day. Extraordinary examples of both the human toll, but also the human spirit. And I left feeling with mixed emotions, saddened by the impact, but heartened by the leadership and the commitment by an entire community. I know they appreciate your prayers. I know they appreciate your thoughts. They'll also appreciate your treasure. And I thank you in advance for helping them get through yet another catastrophic event. And I know they'll return strong. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Jim, I would like to respond to some of your presentation.
Yes, sir, please.
You mentioned several things that elicited emotional response in me. Number one, I want to talk about what the hurricane and the impact of the hurricane out in parts of southwestern Louisiana. You know, oftentimes we see these things, and unless we have those experiences, it does not strike us the same way, obviously, as the persons who are experiencing it. I must admit, I have not spoken directly to President Burkell, but as you know, in the conversation I had with you earlier today, my intentions are on Tuesday to travel out there to witness myself the destruction, and just to sort of, you know, give him a handshake and others out there and pledge support there. And I invite my colleagues also to consider doing the same. Additionally, the issue with the COVID situations, again, there are disparate impacts on various communities. There are individuals that we know and have heard about who have perished, and it is just a sad situation. Folks will continue to be in pain. So I wish my prayers for any and all of my colleagues on the phone on this line, actually phone, on the Zoom line, who are affected in various ways. So my prayers go out to you and your families, et cetera, who are affected by that issue. Also, I heard you elicit the name of a famous blessed alum of Howard University, which is a school I graduated from, and that's Toni Morrison. I attended Howard undergrad and School of Law. For those of you who don't know, and Toni Morrison is one of our greatest graduates among other luminaries, including Kamala Harris, by the way. We're proud of her. You know, coming out of yesterday and today, eliciting her name sort of causes a reaction in me, a sort of an emotional and spiritual reaction. And I just want to say that Toni Morrison certainly would want the University of Louisiana system to live its creed relative to all aspects, empathy and heartfelt love that we share between ourselves and compassion for the community, and to make sure that all persons who are qualified have the opportunity to be placed in the highest positions that their potentials would allow. So I couldn't let your comments go without making that comment, because that's a powerful name to talk about post the advents that we had on yesterday.
Mr. Carter, I appreciate you very much for those comments. You know, Howard University is produced not just these great national leaders, they produce great state leaders like yourself, like Karen Carter Peterson, and a number of other state leaders in Louisiana. It's a tremendous university. You're exactly right. It's the reason why Toni Morrison was the first selected on our book readings, as we try to engage this conversation, because we all know that conversation has got to be a part of it. The tangible results from this work have to be measured, have to be achieved. And that's our commitment on that. I also would like to, at some point, find a way to connect you with Holly Stave from Northwestern. Simply, but so I know she would appreciate your testimony about Toni Morrison, and I think you would appreciate her expertise as well. That's more on a personal level. But I thank you so much for your comments and your commitment and your challenge, your leadership to us in this area.
Thank you for your report, Dr. Henderson. I'll certainly be very brief and want to thank all of you for your devout attendance on yesterday and the hard work that we engaged in completing the appointment of a new president, UL Monroe. Certainly starting our meeting yesterday, I guess if we would add an hour and a half to yesterday's meeting, it might have been a little bit overboard. So I certainly am glad we stood in recess, and definitely look forward to seeing us work through and communicate and maintain good current awareness of the recovery our campuses realize as a result of Laura and the after effect. And I do think that, you know, in many cases, those traumatic events have a silver lining, and I see a lot of good things occurring. You know, while I was in Lake Charles on last Friday, the campus certainly looked in disarray, and just the things that Jim shared seemed to show some good progress in a very short period of time, despite the fact that there's a tremendous amount of challenge with limited utility and other things that we depend on to be functional. But again, thank all of you for the hard work and effort and commitment you bring to this board and to our universities. I do want to share a little update with you relative to our For Our Future Awards. You know, we've entered our 4th year of awarding those awards. I'm very proud of having been seated on our board during a time in which this was put in place. It was the brainchild of former Chairman Al Perkins, and I think Dr. Perkins put a tremendous amount of effort in paying forward the initiatives that are necessary to help our students to be successful. And I also know that it creates a higher level of engagement directly with students among our board. And we've awarded 100 For Our Future Awards this year, providing more than $75,000 in aid in assisting our students to completing their degrees this year. I want to thank each of you for working to find those students, making the right selections, assuring those students have a catalyst to complete their degrees in a most efficient manner. And I want to thank Ann McKisson for doing an outstanding job of managing our For Our Future Award program. She has been wonderful to work with. I know that in the future, she will continue that good work. And I just can't commend her enough for the quality of work and timeliness she puts towards assuring that our students see the best that this particular program offers. Given our timing, we'll actually have our next meeting on October the 22nd. So we have a little bit of time for recovery. I hope that we all have an opportunity to see each other and that we have safe time and maybe seeing the hurricane season go forward without revisiting us. I would encourage, everyone to take care of yourselves and your families and hope that this time again is a good positive period of recovery for those that were affected, and certainly giving us, for those that were not, an opportunity to engage in contributing to the recovery process. Is there any further business to come before the board at this time? Hearing none, I have a motion from Supervisor Russell to adjourn. We stand adjourned. Have a great weekend, long weekend. Goodbye.